Action Aid Uganda, with collaborative support from Action Aid Australia and funding from Australian NGO Cooperative Program for the past 5 years, has built the capacity of women in northern Uganda to reduce poverty by increasing women's access, control and land ownership in Chole sub-region. Due to the outbreak of COVID-19 as a global pandemic, this has increased inequalities among the vulnerable communities and people living in extreme poverty that has impacted on communities. In this documentation, we highlight women's experiences in the face of COVID-19 for issues, advocacy around women's rights and response to gender-based violence. We tell stories of vulnerable women and deaths that have occurred out of such. 10 years ago, the guns went silent in northern Uganda. Hope was restored and life seems normal. But this was the start of another war without guns. Land became a nightmare in families trying to settle back from the IDPs. Families started having blood stains of their own. Gender-based violence soared up in different homes. In this, the most vulnerable were women and children. They became the victims of the aftermath of the gun war. The guns were turned on them. Here lies Atim Santa, a 48-year-old woman killed by her husband Ojara Alfred, found in a pool of blood. The community was shocked. A trend of domestic-related violence had been reported. Ojara constantly beat his wife. Silently, she died with it.
Ano come pay wa no ti at ano ba no mara mam wachi penge ngoma time
cha ti ta wachi lok tie gengi madung gengi lwany ni ana de I adong ma cha wen wo sementi pa wubi ne madir ma ata kiti getune am pa wuta chwar ni chwar tiu sementi amoni ucharo bagario kombeti chwar piye ni ene waj loke amoni enta ti pa na ni lutini kuni ka go bienu kuni gwak gikel wo ni ena ye ichar sementi
ada yuar ni kiren ni chao ba chuan po chao kombeti we kum dang ma dir mu a cher da la ju ario en kiren maka lwen pelwen ki lwen yo ma be matin la migin matoni o goy la migin ko ngi nyono bak bakang wangi ken la e maria burkin gang kadana don kar pi ga mari.
In her grave, only hope for justice remains as community wishes justice is served.
Tony berdan makir be na mada mala Tony ikar mo to wa aria ka ini wen liek ma walu tiano walu diro no mar ma be peda wa kinyate mo enta winyu gerni no gutele kon enta baby winyu ni utele kinyate kinga mar dan wen
alega matut tigamente utingwa kisa pe ku duki waganya kama waja men mariti mo enu kerbi wur bienu dan ma genu ma part tigamente kun kom laga ma logan be genu be winyu ke kwangi we ko be kunu ka dugu wakan wabing weju gaw bidong ire.
The deceased's brother-in-law says post-mortem results show she was bitten.
Ubin ko gam ko mliel gutar aryan medit gulu hospital Peter pi mosmatom Mr. ka kwete ne gya ngom timo megoni pian rem mo no ko me pere mo ge no tema eno
And the post-mortem results shows that the woman was strangled to death. She was strangled to death.
But this seems far from over, as vengeance is on the heart of the community. The community is fearing a revenge on the family.
Tika bel marai pen luoru tie. Peke nge tam ango me twin utulata. Wakaram timu gimo marai bero, madana mo kene kumere ne an gergang tie kwen. Foli makita e no me be dana mo pongo ye. Ti jamo kan puru ngwaja ogiti wako.
A story of once a lovely woman to the community, shattered by a husband she once loved.
The man came back, he was drunk, he wanted food and asked the woman to provide food, but food was not there at that moment. And you can imagine what now eventually that resulted into.
Actually, since I'm a piaketer la cho, what any kama education center no dara po teru. Ting e chako penyu chom, ti dara chako ngange, ni e chambera puri kami a. Morgan tie ruma ara winyu.
There is an increase in GBV prevalence rate, majorly because of the difficult period brought by the lockdown. Businesses have collapsed, especially the informal business sector. Women who used to struggle through small businesses are not doing it anymore. Only those who are selling foodstuff and all that. And so it has created a very difficult environment for most families.
Shockingly, the women experiencing gender-based violence have immensely increased. The hope for justice remains faint. The police report from March to May 2020 shows over 27 people lost their lives out of gender-based violence. 22 were raped, 164 were defiled, with a total of 538 reported cases of gender-based violence in the region.
For example, in the month of March, we had a death which originates from domestic violence. We had 10. In the month of April, we had 9, May 8, giving us a total of 27. We had rape cases registered, 9 in the month of March, 7 in the month of April, and 6 in May, giving us a total of 22. Defilement cases, we had 61 in the month of March, 46 April, then 57 in the month of May, giving us a total of 164. Then domestic violence cases, these are like physical assault and the rest of it all. We had 99 in the month of March, 93 in the month of April, and 133 in the month of May, giving us a total of 325. Now all this, when we bring it together, we realize that in the month of March to May, general gender-based violence cases give us a total of about 533. These are reported cases. There may be some other cases that could not have reached police, but we believe it could be happening within our community.
But the question is, has this woman found justice?
They cannot even come out. Who will listen to them? Who? You tell me. Who will listen to them? Because the men are the ones who are they are the ones who are at the forefront. And position where women's voices should be heard, you find a man there. And sometimes if you get a woman even in that position, she looks at a man instead of looking at her fellow woman.
Not majority of the women know about their rights, because there are really so many rights: access to land, access to reproductive health services, access to justice. Some don't even know where to seek the justice. At the point in time is that during the COVID-19, you find that some offices are completely locked down, the courts. How can women access the courts? That's why we are advocating for issues around bringing the services closer to the people.
Special court on gender-based violence should be passed. We are happy that the sessions special sessions have already been started and has helped to reduce the backlog. But here is the time, and now is the time when we should now add that as a standing full-time court. Otherwise, this country is sick, and gender-based violence is destroying it.
Of course, as police, we do, once receive the cases, we register cases, we effect arrest, we do investigation, we send some of these cases to court for prosecution.
Akera Franseca is 37 years old, disabled, a single mother with 2 daughters in Amuru. She has been through psychological abuses due to her disability right from her childhood, which made her feel less important to her family and community.
Maria kirmi kwa fa anwe padati no kwa ma yon yene we wur da kan wi ni akon ngo we ting mera tik per kira kan chel ner ki beta pa wur chero ka mo fe ka di kamera di re do gola ka em ala kana du ga pira peri pe cho we chuk pengar per chuk pa dang nena yene ko ne gana wa chir chuk we wi ni la gorom kum dana Kirpa o leg mo, kira ling di, kira bet kini, ano ko petiter na pet ato. No, ta pen mana we ni kato era tik lor wi alora. Era be pe lore. Merkar ke wi ke we cham.
With her disability, Franseca struggles to pay school fees and feed her children.
Kena cham pe. Ye prati pa pe ke mere wara rio mane. Ko a chi ne wa do dang me. No cham, no ko furi. Ta lo ba ke kunyi diak furi. Ke tene da me a che. Ne fur ne aria de. O vele ke wa o ke tu no ke ta pi. Tin ke na lai mar. Ka lo fi di da che no ko ni cham. Qua vào trường mày cái phú quay này cái tên mà ra theo thế ra theo bạc chứ vì cho này mà cái này là ngu pe để pa cho mà cả cái mà cái này bé phải pa cho cái đồng pe đâu nó mẹ cái yam pe nó pe cả.
Akera has been rejected by her brothers because of her disability.
Đồng mà vui bao nhiêu gam mà pe mà lòng mà mày qua cho pe bạc. Yene wa ba ti tam ne no kin tam ki pe yere yene ko ya te na pa nywan ti don kar ma na nywan ko eni ana bera mer pe ko mo da ta chi ka bera ke ma gi mi ki wa cha pe la wa le ko pe ma ra ma dire ana wa cha yo ma ra ke me gi na ti ari yo ke ai wa cha ne kin ki wa cha ne na ana bera nge ngo ko ma ti ke ni ene ma ari bu nywan nya tam ne atwero igere lo ma ma lo por pe ke do la da pero mot ka po la yela mcholo.
Perhaps what she goes through is the same with other disabled women in the region. We speak to Joyce Auma and Person with Disabilities Councillor Teddy to shed light on what women go through.
Women who have mental disability, they are always raped. That one we call it sexual gender-based violence. They always rape them because they don't have sound mind. So they use them and just dump them there. Even deaf people, they are raped because they cannot talk. When it comes to the side of land, women with disability has no land. I can say even from home, because parents, if they are distributing land, they don't give land to these young women with disability, saying for you, you cannot do anything with the land. People should take care of you. What's with now women who has husband? You have disability, your husband passed away, people will now grab that land because your husband is no longer there.
And more so, when time comes for distribution in the family, we are always left out, right from education and shelter, we are being left out. We are not carried equally with other children or other people who are living within that home. What a person who is being cared in that home is defeating us who are born of that home.
The question of land rights for women and persons with disability has been a barrier.
Very many women with disability were chased from their land. That for us, we don't want you here. With your disability, you cannot dig, you cannot do anything. If you are blind, you cannot see. People who have mental disability, they don't feel they should give them even a little space so that they also build their house in it. They don't feel that one. For us, we have complaint on the parent because parents, they don't like us, they neglect us. They just, a parent who has 5 children, always they will say, if you are the 5th child, a child who has disability and you are the 5th, they will say, I have 4 children and a half. Some and another one who has disability, and they will never even take you to school.
When a woman asks for things, they will tell her that, who are you? Why are you speaking such kind of words? You have no rights in this home. You cannot rule me over my father's land. And there you can tell you that if you continue, you will see what is coming out. And it is true. You see there a great fight, chasing you away, telling you that whatever you have done there, leave it, calling you a tractor, putting you in any position that you are not supposed to do. And of course, we don't bear that. We come still to our father's land. And from there we find the same problem as I mentioned in the past. And then we are hung. We are just hung. Nowhere we can go.
There are people who know very well this is customary land tenure system, especially if there's a family where they're fairly elite and they understand the law and they understand Land Act. You find they are fairly better. But if you find a family where partly they are educated, partly they are not educated, you'll find there's always land wrangle. The fairly educated one tend to think, to undermine the uneducated one that they don't know anything. And sometimes they also ride on the ignorance of other family members who are not educated. And then the last class of people are children out of wedlock.
You find that their land has been taken away in unclear circumstances, whereby even the local councils cannot come in for a fact that they're not part of the essential services to come to rescue the woman. Some have tried to support the women, but in certain instances where the corporates and people with large sums of money have evicted the women, this remains a big challenge to be addressed by government.
COVID-19 has made it worse for these women. One would ask, where is the law and policy which is meant to protect them?
How many cases have been dropped? They will say, bring a witness. When you go to court, bring a witness. Supposing you fought 2 of you and no one was there, who is going to be a witness? You just tell me, who is going to be your witness? You are battered in the bedroom. And you can't even tell your children it is your dad who beat me up. They don't have the guts because of respect, because of fear.
Issues around access to their land, the relatives are trying to grab their land away from them. Big companies, corporates are taking away land from the vulnerable people. How can the state come in to intervene in protecting these people's rights?
The young women are actually right now the population in northern Uganda that we would want to look at. If you're looking at NADS, and you're talking about NADS 3, can each watershed begin to review and check how many young people have actually benefited as farmers? How many? How many young people who have benefited are actually women? If they are not young people, if they are not young women, then we have missed the population.
But what should be done to help these women from the predators of gender-based violence?
If government is serious, especially District Community Development Office, they should now start compiling together with the police to find out exactly At this time, the rate of domestic violence has increased tremendously. So this is the time when research is required from the police, and also Department of Community Development should now start going out to find out. If they hear somebody has died or a man has killed a wife has killed a husband, they should take keen interest. Why?
We need to scale up the services, the judicial services, in adjudicating over land. The land committee needs to be resourced in terms of going to the scene of the crime where land conflicts are happening so that they mediate among parties. And so this will enable the woman receive justice in different ways, whereby once you go to the community, they will hear the woman's voice. And that will be a representation in the justice framework.
All the response system that we have from local council 1 to 5 must work to respond and support. But we are also calling upon the civil, the government workers, the chiefs, parish chiefs, the road query, for instance. Where are they when this is happening in Acholi area and children are suffering? So this is a serious issue that need us to be working on.
The formal law in itself alone may not stop. It may not stop the whole issues around domestic violence. We must accompany it with value-laden processes that help to repair society.
Such acts still live in our community.
And the unfortunate bit is that many cases have gone beyond to death. Yeah. There was this case in Ongaho, in Omoro district, where a young man beat up his grandmother. I think that is now in Palabek Ogili. Let me just spot some. A woman stabbed multiple times her husband and died. Just 2 days ago, in Omia Nyima in Kitgum, people were involved in a conflict that led to the death of about 2 or 3 people in that area. So many times we are receiving reports and cases, but because of the restrictions that are there as a result of COVID-19, we are advising strongly that the cultural institution at the lower levels begin to deal with those.
It is not surprising, like I said earlier, that domestic violence is in the increase. And it's also not surprising that domestic violence, especially those that are brought within the mainstream institutions for redress, like police and the courts, tend to collapse because the victims, first of all, cannot sustain longer litigations. The victims of domestic violence are normally disadvantaged members of society. Widows, orphans, children, wives, they are the major victims, and they are naturally disadvantaged. They don't have the money to keep moving to court. They cannot hire the services of a lawyer. So if you push them through these adjournments of the civil courts, they give up. And then the perpetrator is released, the case is maybe even dismissed, and as a result, the man goes or the woman goes back, and the cycle is repeated.
The 2-decade war has left wounds and bruises on us, but how can government help us overcome it? How can government ensure a deliberate action to northern Uganda to help us forget our past and break barriers of opportunity for women?
We need to see that at policy level, that the women are being supported by the Ministry of Lands, that they are being supported in empowerment through processes that are within the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. We would want to see that issues of the inheritance law should really be reviewed and passed. We are talking about the marriage law. Others don't want to call it Marriage and Divorce Act. Because in it there, that is where the rights of women and the children and succession will be. And if you don't handle the issue of succession well, it means that you have terminated the issues of wealth of this generation growing and moving higher and higher.
Those children which those disabled women produce, they are lacking where they can be put. They are lacking where to go, because you may not know your father, whom your mother has got you with. You may not know, and where the clan of the man, you may not know. And if you intend to take that child, that I got pregnancy with this man, the home people or the clan of that man will never accept you. They will deny you even with that child. Whether that child has resembled the man, they will not agree. So they see you as a catch. As a catch. In our language, they say that doggy daho, doggy mon. You are not a pure woman. You are somehow in a form of a woman. Yet you are a pure woman, born with everything except the disability, which is a bit different from making you a full woman. So for that case, I always say that women with disabilities are suffering more than anything.
Gulu District Local Government first came with the standard operating procedures on issues related to GBV, and later on we went ahead to work on an ordinance, GBV ordinance. Unfortunately, the Office of the Attorney General has been very slow in going through, because we made submission to the Office of the Attorney General to scrutinize, the ordinance and see whether it conforms with, the legal standards. So we haven't got back their responses.
These guns were silent, but bloodshed and hopelessness is still part of us. Should we learn from our past? This documentation was produced by Action Aid Uganda with funding from Australian Aid.